It's another Mailbag Monday here on the Athletic Football Show. These will be happening when we're on vacation, but it's always good to keep doing them over the course of the offseason. I really enjoyed the set of questions that we had for this one and the next Mailbag, so excited to dig into these. I'm going to read the questions today. Beller's having some internet issues, so let's start with Tristan. He said, recently there's been some discussion about what constitutes a successful number one overall pick. Specifically, Robert saying the pick doesn't need to turn into an MVP to be a successful pick. With that in mind, what is the line for current NFL quarterbacks who would be worth straight up trading for the number one overall pick? Specifically, which quarterbacks would the Raiders have traded the number one overall pick for this year straight up?
So when you say straight up, like, you have to account for age and all that stuff, right? Like, I think,
of course.
Jared Goff, quality-wise, I think clears that bar, but he's 32 and you're paying him what you're paying him. Like, I think at that point, like, you would want more of a runway for your number one overall pick, right? So to me, the answer is probably like Trevor Lawrence. Like, I would straight up trade the number one overall pick for Trevor.
That's interesting. Okay, so you would rather have Fernando Mendoza right now than Trevor Lawrence?
No, other way around. I would rather have Trevor Lawrence than the mystery box of Fernando Mendoza. And I like Fernando Mendoza, obviously, to be clear, but like, with what I see in Trevor Lawrence, like, I'm confident that's a like above average NFL quarterback, and I still think has a little bit more to reach in his potential. Whereas, maybe Mendoza can be that, but I think it's a complete mystery box.
See, I think I'd still rather have Jared Goff over the next 4 years than Fernando Mendoza, even at that price tag. I think we're underrating how hard it is to be as good at quarterback as Jared Goff is at playing quarterback.
So I think that's fair, but how long do the Raiders have to go before they are as good of a roster as like the 23 Lions or the 24 Lions? Like, I feel like it would still be a 1 or 2 year runway. By then, Jared Goff is 34, 35, and then what? You have a 2-year window with him?
All right,
yeah.
I'll concede that Goff is right there on the line. Okay, so the guy's definitively above the line, right? Where like and obviously like this team would have to want to do this. So for our purposes here, let's just say they're willing to trade you their quarterback for the number one overall pick. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Herbert, all yeses. Drake May, easy yes. The other 2024 guys, I think Caleb and Jaden Daniels. I think I'd probably rather have Caleb and Jaden Daniels than the number one overall pick, even a couple years into their rookie contracts. Yes. The guys that are closer to the line for age, price, all that other stuff, I think Stafford's an interesting one. Like, I think even coming off an MVP season, if you were the Raiders specifically, there's a chance you only get 1 year. What are you doing in 1 year with Matthew Stafford?
Right. Like, this roster's not nearly good enough for that. Like, he obviously clears the bar talent. I think Dak Prescott is in like a similar boat where he probably has more of a runway than Matthew Stafford. But with how old he is and what you're paying him, like, I don't know.
So you'd get Dak's age 33, 34, and 35 seasons.
I guess he isn't as old as I thought. Yeah, Dak I might be willing to do because he is like Dak quarterback 7 to me. Yeah. I think I would do that.
I think Dak and Goff are similar. I mean, I'd rather have Dak, I think, but I think Dak and Goff are a similar enough conversation where I still think I'd rather have Jared Goff. A couple of the other guys that I think are on the line. Would you rather have the number one pick in this year's draft or Brock Purdy?
Man, the Purdy one is hard because I think it's really hard for me to divorce him from Shanahan.
Of course,
man.
That to me is one of
this
the
is where
ones.
It gets really because too, like, they're paying him, but they're not paying him quite as much as like the elite tier, and he is young, he is athletic. I might still want to say like generally have the number one overall pick though. Maybe I'm being ridiculous. Brock is good. I don't know.
He's good. And again,
that one's hard. That one is really hard, actually.
It is hard to play as quarterback in the NFL as well as Brock Purdy has played quarterback in the NFL. And so to me, he's above the line. I have Goff, Trevor. The one where I kind of drew my cutoff point, where it was like, all right, I think this is it for me. Would you rather have CJ Stroud or the number one pick in the draft?
I think I would rather still have CJ Stroud. And I say that for a couple reasons. One, in his class, I would have been willing to take him number one overall. So like he was of that caliber of prospect. And two, we've seen him play pretty well. And I don't think that many first overall picks in what he's had to play behind the last couple of years would have looked very good either. And so I think we're colored by how he hasn't taken the steps that we thought he would take after his rookie year. But I don't think Fernando Mendoza behind that offensive line with no run game will look very good either. And so I think I would probably still lean CJ Stroud.
That is also my answer. So this will depend on how you stack up the quarterbacks. But the next group that I had was like Darnold, Bo, and Baker. And obviously, those guys are all in different scenarios. Like Darnold and Baker are obviously at the same point in their career in terms of how old they are. So let's take those two guys first. Would you rather have the first overall pick in this year's draft or Sam Darnold?
And Sam, I would probably still rather have the first overall pick. I think Sam Darnold is really good at a specific few things, but I think he is a good quarterback. I think he is closer to like what the 2018 Titans with Ryan Tannehill were, and that team overall was just better with the Seahawks than some of those Titans teams were.
Can I talk you into picking Darnold because Darnold is locked in for the next 3 years at a reasonable price?
So if anything, yeah, like you're not paying him $55 million a year.
And that's the Tannehill problem, right? Is that Tannehill was cheap for a very short period of time, and then Tannehill got paid market level value. Tannehill got paid what Darnold makes now.
Yeah. Because of the money, you can maybe get me there on that one. But I don't think I could take that same argument for like Baker Mayfield. But he's also just a little bit like
Baker's a free agent after this year. Right. And so I think that one's kind of dicey. And then you're maybe not the right person to ask about this, but Bo Nix are the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft.
Number 1 overall pick.
I think that's where my cutoff line is too. I think it's like Stroud and then Darnold is like right there. And I think I'd still rather have Darnold. And then below that, I had like Bo, Baker, Jalen Hurts is in that range for me. And then the guys that I think are interesting, just because it's a kind of a different set of considerations than everyone else. Would you rather have Jaxson Dart or the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft?
Well, the number 1 overall pick. And like Dart had some flashes, but I would rather have the number 1 overall pick.
And I assume you'd say the same about Shough.
Yes.
All right,
again, I think like they've got paths, but like I would rather have the prospect who I think was better from the jump. And it's not like any of those guys blew our socks off as rookies. They were fine, and you can see the path, but it's not like it wasn't like 2016 Dak Prescott, where you're just like, oh, that guy is obviously an NFL like starting quarterback.
So everyone's list is going to be unique and tailored to their own preferences and tastes, but right around quarterback like 14, 15 is where we're sitting.
Yeah, I think that you would need to be like, I would need to have some amount of confidence that you are just like in that top half of NFL quarterback. And then with a couple of them, you have to like think about money and age and stuff like that. But that probably is the range, yeah.
And I feel like this is justification for my viewpoint on this, because this is kind of where it's like, hey, if it's quarterback 14 and you're paying that guy on his rookie deal, you'd probably be pretty happy with that. So I think that's a good cutoff. And obviously, like, this is not a pure ranking of like quarterback quality. Like Caleb Williams is not the 10th best quarterback in the league right now. But when you bake in how young they are, development, flashes that we've seen from them, that's part of this consideration. Like if I was trying to win a Super Bowl this year, I'd absolutely rather have Dak Prescott than Caleb Williams. But that's not the question here. This is about long-term assets and multi-year assets. All right, next one here from Rev West. If you look at the first 5 years of each coach's tenure, they're strikingly similar. Mike Tomlin and Nick Sirianni. The biggest difference, in my opinion, is that Tomlin inherited a team that was less than a year removed from winning the Super Bowl, with a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, a young franchise quarterback, and a very talented roster built by a GM that looked like a surefire Hall of Famer. Whereas Sirianni inherited a team moving on from its franchise quarterback without in-house options at OC or DC. If Sirianni's next 14 years goes the way Tomlin's did, he'd be such an abject failure that I think it'd be hard to imagine him lasting 2 years, let alone 14. So for their respective successful teams, Tomlin was not more involved in the X's and O's on the roster or the roster construction than Sirianni, and yet Tomlin is treated like a great coach and Sirianni is treated like he's constantly on the hot seat. What gives? What do you make of this?
I think that there are a couple of considerations. One, I do think it is a good question for trying
to check
question. Our priors a little bit. Like,
yes, I agree.
Because like I was a huge Tomlin guy, obviously before. I mean, for a while, like it's easy to be. I think he was a very good coach, and then Sirianni, I think, has been a little bit more of a complicated situation. Obviously, I think at least I have given a lot more credit to like how he's built the roster and some of the star players, and obviously having Vic Fangio being there as the defensive play caller and stuff like that. And so, I think a big reason. I think it's a fair question in terms of how we perceive them, but I think the primary difference is like it's how those fan bases and how those buildings also perceive like what the head coach is supposed to be. Like, it just feels like there's a different amount of pressure to being the Philadelphia head coach. And so that's why there's always a little bit more heat on a guy like Sirianni, even if it's like similar accomplishments over that span, where I think there's a little bit less urgency and rabidness to what Pittsburgh was doing. Like, I think they had always felt more comfortable, like kind of playing the long game, just being respectable every year. Like, it just felt like they were more comfortable with that. So you just didn't get the heat turned up quite as hot. Whereas with Sirianni and the Eagles, and this isn't even just a Sirianni thing, it's with any Eagles head coach, anything short of like 10 wins and a playoff win is like, it's not good enough. Whereas I just don't think you got that amount of year-to-year volatility and rabidness with like the Steelers fan base.
I'd say a couple things. I think our patience is different now than it used to be, period. Like,
That's
the
fair,
expectation for when you're going to get results from a head coach, those expectations have changed now compared to where they were a decade ago. And I think that some of that's justified. Like, I thought a lot about this recently, just in how quickly you know about a coach, how quickly you should understand, like, this guy's a difference maker, this guy's not. And I think in this day and age, we do get a pretty fast understanding of who is and who is not a needle mover when it comes to the head coaches that we hire in the league, especially now that more and more of them are play callers, because their impact on the team, I think, is a lot more tangible. And so it's easier to draw that direct connection. So I think that's part of it. I also think that with the Eagles over the last few years, there's just an inherent understanding that they have one of the best rosters in the league. Like, if you look at the talent top to bottom, I think that there's a collective understanding that this is one of the most talented teams in the NFL. The Steelers, if you look at it, so they made the playoffs all the way through 2011. Their downturn was in like 2012 and 2013. They went 8-8 both of those years. They did not make the playoffs. If you look at, and I assume that's what Rev West is talking about here. If you look at those teams in those years in 2012 and 2013, I had to go back and look at this. I'm not intimately familiar with the 2012 Steelers roster and like where they were and what the talking points were. The offense was very much in a state of transition in those 2 years. The offensive line was really banged up. Pouncey played one game, I think, in 2013. Their tackles were kind of on and off the field. And then they drafted DeCastro right in there. And then Pouncey got back healthy. And then in 2014, that's when Le'Veon Bell really broke out and the offense became like a top 10 offense. If you look at the defense in 2012 and 2013, Polamalu only played 7 games in 2012. That was James Harrison's last year there before he spent that one random year in Cincinnati. Like, there just weren't that. Cam Hayward was in year 2. So the Steelers, top to bottom, I just don't think had nearly as much talent as the Eagles have had over the last couple years. And so that's my read on it. Again, that may be imperfect and an imperfect kind of representation of what those teams actually were. But I think right now we can all collectively understand that when you have the talent on the Eagles roster, you should be winning double-digit games every single year. So those are kind of the two considerations to me, just the lack of patience we have now and the fact that we know what the Eagles are. I think you could make an argument about truly how good those 2012, 2013 Steelers teams were when they had that kind of 2-year swoon.
And I think that that's a really good way to frame like the rosters and stuff, because part of the question frames is like, well, Tomlin stepped into a roster that had just came off of a Super Bowl. And so you could say maybe in year one, like,
and then he won one. He won one,
and then he
won
one. So he made good on it. But then, yeah, to what you were saying, like, sure, maybe the Eagles year one roster was not as good as what the Steelers year one roster was for Tomlin. But since year 2, year 3, year 4 of Sirianni, they've built consistently some of the best rosters in the NFL. Like, the cupboard has never been bare in Philadelphia. And so, and I think, again, I don't remember some of like what the reporting or what the vibe was during some of those Steelers seasons in like 2009 or whatever it be, when they were winning 8 games and winning 9 games. But whenever the Eagles have downturns, there's always so much pressure of like, what's going on in the building and all this stuff. And it just, again, I think the scrutiny now is a little bit different than it might have been 15 years ago. And so, and then I think part of the other question too is like, you know, we've gotten to year 13 of Tomlin, and then he had continued to get this benefit of the doubt. And it's like, well, yeah, he had done it for over a decade. Whereas with Sirianni, we're so much shorter into his tenure that I just don't feel like that has been built up as much, if that makes sense.
In year 1 of Tomlin, they go 10-6, they lose in the wild card round. In year 2, he wins the Super Bowl. And so just think about how much leeway, especially in that era, that buys you. They go 9-7 in year 3, so that's like a small step back. Then they lose in the Super Bowl. Then they go 12-4 again in 2011 before that kind of 2-year downturn. And so after winning the Super Bowl, they had one small step back and then 2 12-4 seasons. And so, and again, I think that just how much the Eagles have bottomed out in some of those years where they haven't necessarily gotten all the way to the Super Bowl, the way those years have ended, how kind of hopeless those couple years have felt. I mean, if you look at the Steelers did kind of come to this place where they also had like an offensive coordinator that just kind of ran its course. Like Bruce Arians was the offensive coordinator there until 2011. And remember, he left and went to the Colts. And then they replaced him with Todd Haley. But I don't think there was ever, they finished 21st in scoring in 2011. But I still don't think there was the feeling of like, this is so ugly, everyone has to be fired. Like Bruce Arians immediately got another offensive coordinator job. It wasn't like they ran him out of town on a rail. And so at least how I remember it. So I just think that the dynamics at play are just a little bit different for how we talk and think about the Eagles roster and expectations than they were for the Steelers at that point. Next one here from Tuxedo Cats. What's the best coaching staff you can assemble using only the current NFL head coaches? Finally, if given an average NFL roster, how far could your team advance in the playoffs? I built like full staffs on each side of the ball.
Yeah, I went down to like DB's coach and all that stuff. I didn't necessarily do like pass game. I didn't go like 14 layers deep, but I have
pass game coordinators and run game coordinators on both sides of the ball.
and that's fair. Some of them I think I could fit into here and it would work, but I have like 10 or so names. So let's just start. Okay, I'm going to start with head coach. I'm taking Sean McVay. I just think that has the best quality of offensive head, play calling head coach. And also just, I think his overall scope for what the building can do is just the best. At OC, I don't think he's necessarily the second best offensive mind, but I put Ben Johnson in part because I wanted Kyle Shanahan somewhere else.
Interesting. Okay. So where'd you put Kyle Shanahan?
I have Kyle Shanahan actually as my wide receivers coach because I think he is excellent at that. And so if I'm truly trying to maximize the quality of what I'm getting out of that position, that's where I think I can get that. And then I don't think I'm losing anything by not having Kyle at offensive coordinator because I think Ben Johnson also does such a fantastic job. And so that was where I put him.
The one question I was going to have for you before I run through mine, if you were hiring a coach solely to handle, I guess not solely because you're incorporating some action passes in there too. But if you had somebody to solely handle the passing game, like that was their purview, who do you think is best in that role specifically? That's the one where I didn't have like a clean answer. All of the other ones I felt like, all right, I know who I want in these spots. But passing game coordinator on offense specifically was the one where I have a name, but it's not one that like was very clearly and quickly apparent to me.
If I had not put Ben Johnson, I think it might be him. And I used Sean Payton for something else, but it might be Sean Payton, which is funny because they have a little bit of shared DNA. But I just think that coaching tree, if I'm thinking where I want to make sure I cover my bases a little bit better with pure pass, it's probably that tree.
I considered Sean Payton for that reason, just like the drop back world of that offensive system compared to like the McVay world. I eventually went with Liam Cohen just because I think it's clean enough. Like if he's handling the pass game. So on offense, I had McVay as my head coach, Shanahan as my offensive coordinator. I had Liam Cohen as my pass game coordinator. I had Ben Johnson as my run game coordinator.
Okay, that's fair. I think I like that.
I think if you talk to other guys around the league and just how involved he is in the creation of the run game, I think he has a really good reputation in that area, specifically among all these play calling head coaches. I had Kevin O'Connell as my quarterbacks coach.
See, that's where I started, and then I ended up landing on Jim Harbaugh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Dynamically, that might be a little bit weird, but his track record is like pretty undeniable with what he's gotten out of this quarterbacks at basically every stop.
Canales I had as my receivers coach because he's done it. And then I had Dan Campbell coaching the running backs, just like purely for vibes.
I had him as my tight ends coach. I mean, he's played the position. He's done it before. Like
that
makes
makes
sense.
sense.
Also probably be. I hadn't put a run game coordinator, but he probably would be mine.
I originally forgot to put an OC and had Shanahan as the tight ends coach, and so that's why I don't have one on this list. What'd you do on defense?
Really quickly, O-line coach was harder to find because there's just not that many of them. I put Andy Reid. He's really the only guy who like has been one and is a NFL head coach right now. But that was hard to find.
I think that, or I think Dan Campbell could probably coach the offensive line too. If you're a tight ends coach, like that's.
He was my first guess, and then I was like, there has to be somebody who's done it before, and so I went looking.
I think it's just Andy Reid. There is some overlap if you look at like tight end coach history and offensive line coach history.
Mm-hmm.
There are guys who have moved from one to the other. Like to me, I'm just off the top of my head, the best example, Clayton Adams was the tight ends coach in Indy for several years before he ended up becoming the offensive line coach in Arizona. So I think there's at least some overlap if you've been a tight ends coach before. What'd you do on defense?
So defense, I've got Mike McDonald calling plays. I mean, why would you not? And then I did D-line coach, linebacker coach, and DBs coach. D-line, I put Robert Saleh. That was actually a little bit trickier for me to find, but I just think that his defenses have always had that.
Dan Quinn has been a defensive line coach. That's why I picked Dan Quinn.
Yeah. I almost did Quinn, but I think I kind of just like Saleh's defenses a little bit more in general, so I ended up picking. But you're kind of going for the same thing, right? Where it's like this 4 down, just like get after it off of the edge kind of front. So Dan Quinn does actually make a lot of sense because he's done it. DeMeco Ryans, linebackers coach, that one felt pretty easy to me. And then DBs, I know he was obviously not a good head coach in his first year with the Jets, but like Aaron Glenn's track record as a DBs coach is very good. And so I also had Aaron Glenn. Take him there.
The other ones I had among the head coaches, Jesse Minter, pass game coordinator on defense.
I almost made him DBs coach, so I like that.
I had Saleh as the run game coordinator.
Oh, okay, that makes sense too.
So that's fun. I think with an average roster, that coaching staff can win a playoff game.
Oh, I think so. I think that maybe even like they could get. You probably run out of road in terms of star power by the time you get to the conference championship, but you could win like a divisional game.
I think a wild card round weekend game that to me feels realistic. When you get into divisional round and actual conference and championship Sunday, I think the talent starts to shine through.
This would get closer to like we would have to find what we think is roster 16 right now in the NFL, and then be like, what would they do with that? That's going to take a little bit more time, but
well, let's do it.
Yeah, let's try to flesh this out.
Let's look at all 32 teams.
Or actually, what are Super Bowl odds right now? Which is going to be a little bit shaded a little bit by who these teams' coaches are at the moment.
That's true.
But still.
All right, so looking at it right now.
Like, it's basically the Jaguars. Like, do you think that they could get to the conference championship game with the Jaguars?
Yeah, if it's the Jaguars, I think yes.
Because that's
I think the Jaguars could get to the conference championship game with this group of coaches, yes.
Because that's like somewhere between roster probably 14 and 17, just depending on how you feel about it. I think that they could get there.
Yeah. When you actually put it in like real terms, like practical terms like that, I could buy that team with that coaching staff winning 2 playoff games. I absolutely could. All right, next one here. Eric said, Tim Robinson showed us that sharing nachos is a better window into a person's character than having a beer. So pick a table of people to split a platter with. A head coach, a GM, and a starting quarterback who would all share nachos with integrity. I saw an amazing viral tweet, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where somebody was saying that when they're sharing nachos with somebody, they're always thinking 2 steps ahead, which it's exactly how I see a plate of nachos, where it's not just what I'm going to do this time. It's like, what are the next 2? And then I also saw
what bites are left.
Yes, like where am I going? Like it's almost like a chessboard. So I've had a lot of nacho content for me recently. But what is your answer to this? Who are you sharing a plate of nachos with?
This one was interesting. I think for head coach, I would want someone who feels a little bit more chill, a little bit more slow. And so I was kind of debating between like DeMeco Ryans and maybe like Kevin Stefanski. Those 2 guys seem like chill. They're not going to dominate the nacho platter here. That's kind of where I started at head coach.
So I had 2 different answers. Okay. Is this a group of people that I think would be, like you just said, pretty chill, laid back, normal experience? Like the 3 people in those roles, head coach, GM, and starting quarterback, who feel most just like a person you would run into at a sports bar and have a conversation with. My answer was Kevin Stefanski, Joe Hortiz, and Jared Goff.
Goff I almost had for quarterback. I think quarterback is actually the easiest to find good answers for here. I thought GM was hard, and then head coach is like, there are a couple of good answers, but I think that was also a little bit tricky.
Just having had conversations with all of those people, I think that would just be like this is a group of actual human beings that I can sit here and have a conversation with. The other answer I had was just what would be the most entertaining hour of my life or 2 hours of my life. That answer was John Schneider, Todd Monken, and Josh Allen.
See, I would almost want a quarterback who's a little bit more insane than Josh Allen and really just like turn that up to an 11.
I'd still want it to be a place I'd want to be.
Yeah, fair enough. You can't go like overboard. I think that's fair. I did have Josh Allen on my short list for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks was hard. I think Trevor would be incredibly chill. Sam Darnold, I think, seems like a very delightful man.
Darnold would be my other answer if it wasn't Jared Goff.
There you go. Okay, I think Tyler Shough seems like a good time. Jordan Love is one of the few players that I have met. I think he is like my tempo. He's just a very laid back sort of guy, and I think that would be a good time. So my short list for quarterbacks ended up being not very short.
You a big nacho guy?
I don't know if I order them all the time, but it's like, how could you not enjoy them whenever they're there? If they're there, I will go to town, but I don't feel like I'm always the guy pushing for it.
My problem is most of the time, I feel like a place that serves nachos, like any sort of sports bar, the nachos are like a C-. Like there just aren't that many places where nachos are available to me that I think the nachos are worth getting. There are a couple places in the city though where I'm like, the nachos I think are very, very good.
I would rather make them, or also, again, this gets tricky if you're talking about sports bars because they can be pretty mid too. But I have a friend who just makes like incredible quesadillas and dips. And like if I'm doing just like a dippable kind of cheese sort of thing, I kind of lean there a little bit.
All right, next one here from Shrilly said, this is a question based on some of the dialogue in this and other discords. How many backfields are there where both the first and second running back are debatably as good as each other? So more 1A, 1B instead of a clear pecking order rotation. How many teams did you have for this?
So I had, I think, 3 that I felt decent about. And then there are like 4 or 5 backfields that I just like genuinely do not know what to do with at this state and time. And so the 3 that I landed on were New England. I feel like that feels like a legitimate like 1A, 1B with Stevenson and Travion Henderson. Pittsburgh, to me, with Jalen Warren and Rico Dowdle, I think that's like a relatively fair 1-2 split. And then I actually want your thoughts on this. Where are you at with Chicago? Like, do you think DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monunga is close enough that that's like a 1A, 1B?
Yes, that is one that I had on my list. I had way more than that.
There were a few that I just like genuinely don't know how it's going to shake out. Like Jacksonville, for example, with Bashal Tutin and like Chris Rodriguez and Allen. Like that one I just genuinely don't know how that's going to shake out. Washington, I felt similarly about. Carolina, New York. I think there were teams where I like a team like the Patriots, I know that those top 2 guys are going to get the majority of the carries, and I feel good about what the share is going to be. With teams like New York or Washington, like I actually just don't know what the share is going to look like, so it was harder.
I just think right now, on May 20th, or whenever we're recording this, which ones do you feel like there's a clear pecking order delineation between them? And so, and which ones are a little bit murkier? I had Jags. I had the Titans just because, like, I don't know, Tony Pollard is whatever. Like, that's one where I think that says more about Tony Pollard standing than it does about Tajay Spears. The Broncos, like, we'll see what happens with year 2 of RJ Harvey. Like, obviously, year 1 wasn't very good, but I think that one could be a little bit murkier by the end of the year. Washington, the Bears. I had the Vikings with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. I had the Bucks.
That was one
with Kenny Gainwell and Bucky Irving.
Kenny Gainwell and Bucky Irving. Yeah, that's a good one.
Obviously, Bucky Irving had a fantastic rookie year. Was banged up last year, but the Bucks paid Kenny Gainwell $7 million a year. Like, I think that is going to be a little tighter than it might seem. And I also even think after spending a first-round pick on him, think about the way they've used their backs in the past. When Zach Charbonnet is healthy, I think the Seahawks are going to be one of these teams.
Yeah, that one I just pushed out of my mind because he's hurt. Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And because Price had never been a lead back, even in college. And so he probably will be splitting time in the NFL.
That's true. Patriots is a good one. And then I also had the Steelers. So I had, what is that? That's 10 teams?
That was the thing is I think that there are a lot of teams that do not clearly have a bell cow back. I guess in my mind, I was imagining this more as like what teams have 2 actually good backs that also are definitely going to get carries. Where I think some of these teams, like, it's not necessarily 2 very good players splitting carries. It's just like that's where the backfield is at.
So you read more into the 1A, 1B thing than I did. To me, it was just like, where is there a clear line of demarcation?
Who doesn't have a guy?
The top guy and the next guy.
Yeah.
Next one here from Headline Plays. Bit of a silly one, but who is the best player on any team you would sacrifice for a game if it guaranteed you a pick 6 at some point in said game? It's the biggest swing play in football. Is it worth missing, say, a T. Higgins caliber guy? There's no injury involved. Basically, the Jalen Carter spitting incident for profit. Who is your answer to this?
So it has to depend on the team. Like, I wouldn't want to do T. Higgins because I just don't think the Bengals have enough options to score points if they don't have a T. Higgins. And so I know you're getting the free 6 points, but like that one seems a little bit tricky to me, especially with how bad their defense is. I do think someone like Jalen Carter is a good one because the rest of that Eagles defense is still really good. And so getting a free 6 points for that defense to play with is good. I was also trying to find a Texans player I felt was a good answer for that exact reason, where it's like elite defense that can afford to lose a very good player if you give me a free 6 points. The problem then
is not just a free 6 points. It's more than 6 points.
Right,
it's
you're also stealing a possession.
6 points.
Right.
I think you are underrating how important that sort of swing is. I was looking up just random pick 6s over the course of the season just to see like what the EPA swing is on a pick 6. And some of these are a little bit skewed because a team was deeper into the opposing territory before the play happened.
Well, but so that's where it gets tough. Right, exactly.
But so like, for example, the Ernest Jones pick against Max Brosmer was a 10-point swing in EPA.
Because, they were on the 10-yard line or whatever it was.
10 points.
It's a lot.
Even if it's 8 points, there is no non-quarterback in the NFL that's probably worth 8 points in a single game. I don't know if there is a position player that would justify this.
In terms of how they end up shaping the betting odds, that is true, but I don't think that is actually true. To be clear, my answer that I actually put down was Danielle Hunter. I think the Texans could afford to lose Danielle Hunter because they have Will Anderson for 7 points worth of value.
I think maybe there are a few examples of this over the years you could point to, like the Eagles on-off splits without Lane Johnson at times and how crazy those looked. Like maybe somebody like Christian McCaffrey, just like how much of an engine of the offense he is. But even with those like one-off examples, I'm not sure there's any non-quarterback for one game that I would pick over something like this. If you don't have any sort of option as a swing tackle, maybe that's it. But you can spend all game chipping that guy. Like, I just think that you can account for any player, almost any player you would miss in this scenario in a way that 8 points, like an 8-point swing in EPA like we're talking about here, would be worth it.
I think maybe too, I was struggling with, I think when I took this question, I was imagining it as like, every game of the season, this is how I'm doing it. It probably is different if it's like, can I survive for one game?
It's one game.
Yeah. I don't know. Even then, I don't think the betting odds do a good enough justice to like how important some of these players are.
All right, so who are the actual examples? Like if we're willing to play in the sandbox, we're like non-quarterbacks, It's very, very hard to get there. Who do you think are the non-quarterbacks that are that load-bearing where they wouldn't be worth sacrificing in something like this?
I think there would be a lot of them. I think there would be almost like a dozen tackles. I think the top 3 or 4 corners.
A dozen tackles?
Yes, it's a deeply important position. And some of these teams only have one good one.
I think you are drastically overrating. So in your mind, the Vegas odds just are wrong in terms of like how the line would swing if one of these players was missing. They're just wrong.
Depending on how important I think the player is. If you're missing like all pros, yes, I do believe that they are wrong.
Give me an example.
Like Patrick Surtain. Like if the Broncos lose Patrick
absolutely
Surtain.
Not. Absolutely not.
I would rather have Patrick Surtain.
You think that the downgrade from Patrick Surtain to Jahdae Barron is 8 points?
They can only play the way they play because they have Patrick Surtain. Yes.
I'm just not sure there's any non-quarterback that's going to clear this bar for me. Even the guys who are like completely central to the way a team operates.
I think that I would have a good amount.
I'm going to ask a couple coaches this question.
Okay.
I
would want to hear what they say. Yeah.
Because this is always fun. I remember
because
asking,
for them, it's also, is it worth the headache of having to like re-game plan for like not having these guys? Obviously 7 points is a lot, but
the one that feels similar to me, this was a question we got. It's crazy that I remember this. It's almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
We got a mailbag question that was, would you rather for the rest of the season be guaranteed that your team would not suffer another injury or be guaranteed to never turn the ball over again? And the coach I asked, like, emphatically was like, turnovers. Like, if you promised me I would never turn the ball over again. And so this reminds me of that, because it's like, I think you are understating how crucial in a 1-game sample it would be to know going in that you were going to have a pick 6 at some point in the game. It's like a massive game-swinging play.
I probably am, but I think it's hard for me to say, like, I don't want Kyle Hamilton on the field or whoever it is. Like, it's hard for me to emotionally get there.
I still think the list is much, much shorter than you're making it out to be. All right.
I think it's long.
Next one here. This one doesn't really apply to you, and we're tweaking it a little bit. But Captain Punches says, high fidelity style question. Your all-time top 5 football breakups in autobiographical order, autobiographical by pain level. So I don't really have these, like a coach or player leaving the team where it like truly like broke my heart. There are guys that they retired and like I was sad to see them go, but I think that's a little bit different. I'm changing this. I'm going to do heartbreaks, like top 5 football heartbreaks when it comes to like a moment that just left you emotionally devastated and the fallout and having to deal with that. My number 1 still to this day is not the Bears losing the Super Bowl. It's the NFC Championship game lost to the Packers in 2010. That one still lingers with me in a different way than even losing the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl season, I was a freshman in college. It was so magical. Like it was a hard day. Like I watched that game in my college girlfriend's dorm room, which was a terrible mistake. Like I cannot believe that's how I watched the Super Bowl. I think I wanted to be alone. I don't want to try to figure out what my 18-year-old brain was thinking. But the 2010, that was my senior year of college. I was at a bar in Chicago. Like I love that 2010 team. That was the Julius Peppers year. Like I really, really love that team. Losing to the Packers in that way for the quarterback to get hurt during the game. Like speaking of pick sixes, like the BJ Raji play that I still like see in my nightmares. Like that one still is probably number 1. Weirdly, number 2, there's a lesson to be learned here. In terms of like heartbreak in the moment, because it was the last play of the game, the 2013 Aaron Rodgers, Randall Cobb walk-off in week 18 that won them the game, that Chris Conte play, that honestly might be number 2.
Really? Even though it's a regular season game?
Just because it was the end of the game, right?
Yeah.
Just because it was the end of the game, like it swings in that moment. Like the emotional kind of yank from they're going to the playoffs, so this is over, and this guy tore our hearts out again. That might be number 2. Super Bowl is number 3. Double Doink is probably number 4.
Is that one at least funny, though?
No.
Really?
No.
Yeah, maybe this is me just being removed. That one is funny to me.
That is one of the 2018 team is one of the times I'm like, I was most susceptible to being blinded by the excitement that comes with having a team that wins more games than it should. Like for whatever reason, at that point, I was also like, my life was a mess at that point, but I was just in a place like watching that 2018 team where like, even if like logically I knew that team wasn't good enough, the defense was so good and so fun that you can convince yourself it's capable of more than it actually is.
And they stopped the Rams. Who was stopping the Rams at that time?
It just, so that one was tough because I think I had deluded myself into believing that team could win a playoff game or two. And then the 2005 divisional round game with Steve Smith just like absolutely burning down that Bears defense. Like that was the first year. 04, you could see the glimpses of it, but then in 05, that 05 Bears defense, that was like, they were a truly great defense that year. And so to kind of really start falling in love with that version of the team and that era of the team, and then for Steve Smith to come in and just like rip out your hearts and like stomp on it. Like that was a really, really tough one. So those are probably the 5 that I would say in order of pain and suffering that they caused.
Mm-hmm. See, those are interesting. Yeah, because those are really not like players stepping away or situations breaking and stuff. Those are just the moments.
That never really, in terms of football, maybe I'm far enough removed from it now and how I think about it that I've kind of like, I've forgotten whatever emotional toll like a player leaving. And there are weird ones. Like they seem small, but in the moment they bum me out. Like the Bears trading Greg Olsen. Like that bummed me out. And weirdly, both of these were to Carolina. The Bears letting Chris Harris go. Like when they let Chris Harris go sign with the Panthers, that was, even in the moment, I was like, this is stupid. Like I can't believe this is happening. But like those are probably the 2 that would stick out, and those just aren't that monumental. Like they're very small ones. And so I think heartbreaks is probably a better set of answers, and I would say those are the 5.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, see, I don't really have as much of those. I will say in terms of like quarterbacks I have adored and like them stepping away, the Andrew Luck one hurt a lot. Like I was genuinely distraught as a human being when Andrew Luck stepped away. Most of my other like fan related ones would just be like esports ones. Like when I first started watching League of Legends again in 2018, I was a 100 Thieves fan, and they had this player named Someday on the roster, and he was just a rock for like 5 years. And then when he stepped away and played for a different team, that was one where I was like, it felt weird seeing him in another jersey, even if he'd probably passed his prime.
Watching Julius Peppers play for the Packers after playing for the Bears was a tough one.
That's brutal. That
was a tough one. Seeing him do like a Lambeau leap, even if he wasn't somebody that obviously the franchise can claim because he's still a Panther first and foremost. It was still like watching him go from Chicago to Green Bay. That one I did not really enjoy. All right. That is all we've got for today. We'll be back next week with our next mailbag. Sincerely appreciate everyone who took the time to send in some questions. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching. Follow The Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.